And just remember, if you're gonna lie, then keep the lies small or you're probably gonna get caught. Just ask Brian Williams. Now, for those of you that don't know, Brian Williams was a famous news anchor from back in the day. He was known for two things. One, for being a really good news anchor. And for two, for lying about his plane getting hit by an RPG during the Iraq War. Okay, listen closely. The year was early 2000 something. Brian going crazy in the news game. Everybody loves him. He gets a call from the studio. They say, Brian, come up here. Brian says, it's my big break. Goes up. Studio head says, Brian, you going to Iraq? He said, did I get in trouble? Did I do something wrong? They said, no, we just need a reporter to report things out there. You're that guy. But don't worry, we just gonna get you one of them vests. You're gonna be good, you're gonna be good. So Brian heads out to Iraq with his vest. He start reporting stuff. He hops on a helicopter. While he's flying on that helicopter, the pilot goes, oh my God, it's an RPG. Brian said, where? I know I should have worn a bigger vest. The pilot said, oh, you didn't let me finish. It's an RPG that hit the plane in front of us. Brian said, where? We gotta get that on camera. The pilot said, oh, you didn't let me finish again. An RPG hit the plane in front of us about an hour ago. Brian said, is something wrong with you? Never mind, let me just finish my job. Brian finishes reporting the Iraq War. Brian flies back to the United States. Now, here's where things start to get wicked. Brian reports, when he gets back, he reports, a RPG hit the plane right in front of me. It was crazy. But that story didn't really pick up too much traction, so Brian decides to add a little bit more flair. He says, an RPG hit my plane that I was in. Everybody said, Brian, what? He said, yeah. He's on talk shows repeating this, just straight up lying. Letterman said, so what happened to the plane though? Brian said, let me just show y'all a picture. It's gonna be easier. See that scrape right there? That's where RPG hit us. You know, it wasn't too crazy. It was scary, but it wasn't too crazy. Everybody said, wow, Brian, you're really brave. Brian said, I know. The soldiers who were actually on the plane said, oh, Brian, you really are brave, huh? Brian said, perhaps I didn't think this one all the way through. The soldiers who are actually on the plane that got hit by the RPG go on Facebook. They say, yeah, Brian lying. But the crazy part is the soldiers only came out like 12 years later. So Brian kept this lie going for the better part of a decade. Then Brian decides to comment on that post saying, y'all right, I was lying. Brian hops on the news because he's an anchor and he makes a special announcement. He says, y'all, remember that story from a while back when I told y'all I was on the plane, my plane got hit by an RPG? I don't want to say I was lying. You see, the thing is, listen closely. He says, I was reporting that story so much that I must have actually thought I was on the plane. Everybody said. Brian said, all right, y'all, be easy. Turn the cameras off. Turn the cameras off. Brian goes to the studio network. He said, yo, they say you fired Brian. He said, that makes sense. Now, he technically wasn't fired because he signed a 5-year contract deal with NBC, but he was suspended for 6 months and demoted way down to breaking news anchor. And his career was never the same after that. Keep your life small.